Welcome to the Deep Dive. We'll turn those complex stacks of information into real clarity you can use. And today we are doing a really critical deep dive into systems thinking for leaders. Think of it as the ultimate strategic shortcut. Our mission here is pretty straightforward. We want to help you get that strategic foresight, the ability to quietly stay maybe 3 steps ahead. It's about moving beyond just constantly reacting, putting out fires all day.
Which is exhausting.
Totally exhausting. And instead, moving into this space where you're taking deliberate foundational action. Now, here's the hook, and this comes right from the sources we look at. The biggest failures in leadership, they rarely seem to come from, bad intentions.
No, not usually.
It's more often from what the research calls brilliant decisions made in isolation. You see a problem, you apply what looks like a perfect fix.
A logical, linear solution.
Exactly. But because you didn't see how everything is connected in your system, that one little change kicks off this unexpected cascade somewhere else. Maybe turnover suddenly shoots up, or quality takes a nosedive. The reality is we're in this volatile, super interconnected world, and just thinking A causes B, that linear approach, it's just not enough anymore.
That really is the critical pivot point, isn't it? What feels like chaos to most leaders, the market doing crazy things, organizational surprises. It's actually, underneath it all, a predictable system. It's structured.
Predictable. That sounds counterintuitive.
Well, predictable in the sense that it's driven by underlying patterns, by feedback loops, by built-in delays. It's a whole network that shapes what happens long before you actually see the results. And the real opportunity for you as a leader is learning to see that structure beneath the surface. Once you can do that, uncertainty becomes something you can navigate, maybe even leverage.
Okay, let's unpack that, because usually we focus on the surface stuff, right? Rising costs, low engagement
The
scores.
symptom.
Yeah, the symptoms, the things that yell the loudest. But systems thinking says, hold on, focusing there is kind of a distraction. So how do we start looking deeper? Where do we begin?
Right. The starting point is really this foundational tool called the iceberg model. The analogy, you only see maybe 10% of the iceberg.
The rest is underwater.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the real dynamics are happening. So we need to sort of mentally dive down through 4 levels to find where the real change happens. So right at the top, the very tip you see, that's events, the specific thing that catches your eye. Customer complaints went up 20% this quarter.
Okay, the immediate fire, the reaction point.
That's it. But then you go just below the waterline and you start seeing patterns or trends. This is where you step back and look over time. Hang on, complaints haven't just spiked now. They've been creeping up for 3 quarters. Or maybe we see turnover peaks every single summer.
So we move from what just happened to what keeps happening.
Precisely. That shifts you from just reacting to maybe anticipating. But we need to go deeper. Below the patterns, you find the systemic structures. These are the how things work bits, the policies, the way resources flow, the actual processes, the power dynamics, the things that generate those patterns.
Yeah.
Like finding out, the customer service team is chronically understaffed and they get almost no training. Or our budget system actually encourages managers to hoard resources instead of sharing them. These are the mechanics producing the trends you see.
That feels pretty fundamental. If you fix the staffing or the budget rules, you should fix the problem, right?
Right.
Why go deeper still?
Because the structures themselves don't just appear out of nowhere. They're built on beliefs. And that takes us to the deepest level, mental models. These are the core assumptions, the values, the often unconscious beliefs that shape the entire system. Maybe the unspoken belief is customer service. That's just a cost center. Minimize it, even if the mission statement says otherwise.
Wow, okay. That changes the game entirely. Fixing the structure, like the budget, is one thing, but tackling the belief that customer service isn't valuable, that's transformation. But if these mental models are unconscious, how do you even find them? You can't exactly run a report on beliefs.
No, you can, and that is the really hard work of systems thinking. It takes structured questioning, serious reflection, maybe bringing in outside perspectives. You have to look at the results the system consistently produces, like high turnover, and ask, what must we believe deep down to keep creating this outcome? The system's behavior often reveals the underlying mental model, regardless of what people say.
Fascinating. So the iceberg model maps the sort of static parts, the rules, the beliefs. But systems move, they change. What drives that dynamic? What's the engine?
Right, that brings us to the dynamics, the engine room. And systems are driven by feedback loops. It's all about circular causality, not just linear A to B. Things feed back on themselves. And there are basically 2 main types of loops you need to understand. First, you've got Reinforcing loops, sometimes called positive loops. Now, positive here just means amplifying. They drive change in the same direction.
Like a snowball effect.
Exactly. Think compound interest money makes more money faster and faster. Or, sadly, the other way, low morale leads to poor performance, which makes morale even lower. It spirals up or down.
Okay, so that's momentum pushing things further and further out. What's the other type?
The second type is balancing loops, or negative loops. And again, negative doesn't mean bad, it means negating change. These loops work towards stability, towards a goal or equilibrium. They resist deviation.
Like a thermostat.
Perfect example. Your body temperature tries to stay at 98.6. If you get too hot, balancing loops kick in to cool you down. If you get too cold, they work to warm you up. They always try to bring the system back to a target state.
So they're corrective forces. In business, maybe like quality control.
Precisely. If product defects start going up, that's a deviation. The quality control loop kicks in maybe more inspections, slowing down the line to push the defect rate back down to the standard. Healthy systems need both reinforcing loops for growth and balancing loops for stability.
Okay, and the danger the sources point out is when we ignore these loops, we end up with fixes that fail.
Oh, absolutely.
The classic example given is leadership sees a budget deficit, a clear problem, the linear fix. Cut costs by 10% across the board. Seems logical. What happens next systemically?
Well, the immediate linear effect is achieve the deficit shrinks. Success, right. But wait, that cut likely triggered other loops you weren't watching. Maybe reduced staffing leads to burnout and more mistakes. That's a reinforcing loop downwards. Maybe cutting maintenance leads to equipment failures later.
Or cutting training leads to lower quality.
Right. Lower quality angers customers, which puts more pressure on that understaffed customer service team. A balancing loop, trying desperately to cope, but failing, leading to even more turnover and higher costs in the long run. The fix made the underlying system sicker.
And we often don't even connect that later sickness back to the original brilliant cost cut because of the time lag. Which brings us to delays.
Yes, delays are absolutely crucial and so often ignored. They're the time lags between an action and its full effect showing up. We know this instinctively, like think about adjusting an old shower. You turn the hot tap. Nothing happens immediately because the water has to travel through the pipes.
So you learn it more.
You turn it more, still nothing, you crank it way up.
And then suddenly you're scalded. Overshoot and collapse.
Exactly that. That's overshoot. In leadership, ignoring delays is just as dangerous. We want quick results, right? So we push hard on, say, changing the company culture. We implement a program. We don't see immediate change, so we push harder, implement another program. We fail to realize that the reason trust is so low today might be because of decisions made 2, 3, maybe 5 years ago. The consequences are just arriving now. Culture change, building trust. These things have long delays built in.
So it demands this profound patience, doesn't it? A persistence. You plant the seeds now, but you have to respect that the harvest comes later. It's that sowing and reaping principle. The delay is part of the deal.
You have to lead looking years ahead, not just at the next quarter's results.
You know, this idea of foresight, of seeing the system over time, it's not new. There's this amazing parallel in the Bible, isn't there? Joseph in Egypt.
Oh, absolutely. Genesis 41. Joseph advising Pharaoh. It's a stunning example of systems strategy way ahead of its time.
Pharaoh has these dreams that fat cows, the skinny cows, that's just the event, right?
Yeah.
The signal.
Yes. A linear thinker might just say, okay, 7 good years, 7 bad years, bad luck. But Joseph saw more. First, he identified the pattern, not just good and bad, but a predictable 14-year cycle. Abundance followed by severe famine. He saw the time dimension.
He saw the trend line.
Second, he understood the interconnections. He knew agriculture wasn't isolated. It connected directly to food supply, which connected to social order, the economy, national survival itself. The whole system was linked. Third, he anticipated the consequences. He didn't just say famine is coming. He said the famine would be so devastating it would essentially erase the memory of the good years. The system would collapse.
Total system failure. And his solution wasn't just tighten your belts when the famine hits. That would be too late, too reactive.
No, his genius was intervening systemically during the years of plenty. The systematic collection and centralized storage. He proposed building a massive buffer, a huge balancing mechanism.
Using the surplus from the good cycle to counteract the deficit in the bad cycle.
Exactly. Create a resource buffer to stabilize the entire system through the predictable downturn. And, well, it saved them.
It really is a masterclass for today. How do you position your organization, your team, to not just survive turbulence, but maybe even thrive through it
Yeah.
because you anticipated the ripple effects.
Which brings us right to the core strategic question for any leader. Okay, I'm starting to see the system, the loops, the delays. Where do I actually intervene to make the biggest difference? This is where the concept of leverage points comes in. Donella Meadows, who is a pioneer in this field, identified these places in a system where a small nudge can create surprisingly large changes in behavior.
Can she rank them right? Some interventions have way more impact than others, like just tweaking a number somewhere is usually low leverage.
Very low leverage. That's like fiddling with the faucet temperature minutely. Real change comes from intervening at deeper levels.
So let's focus on the big ones, the ones that really reshape things. Meadows puts shifting the goals of the system very high up, near the top. Why is changing the purpose so powerful?
Because the goal dictates everything else. Think about it. If the explicit overriding goal of your company is purely short-term profit, everything, resources, incentives, decisions will bend towards that. Long-term health might get sacrificed. But if you genuinely shift the goal maybe towards, say, sustainable value creation for all stakeholders, or towards fulfilling a specific mission, the entire system has to reorient itself. Suddenly, things like employee well-being or environmental impact aren't costs. They're essential to achieving the new goal. The goal steers the ship.
Okay, that makes sense. But then there's the deepest level she identifies, point 11. Changing the mindset or paradigm out of which the system, its goals, its structures, everything arises. This sounds like the mental models from the iceberg again.
It is. It's the most fundamental. It's changing the underlying beliefs and assumptions that drive everything. And yes, it's the hardest, but it's also the most transformative.
Can you give an example? How does changing a mindset play out?
Let's take that example from the source material again. If the dominant mindset is employees are basically cogs in a machine or disposable resources, well, your system will inevitably produce high turnover, low engagement, maybe grudging compliance. The structure reflects the belief. Now imagine shifting that paradigm. What if the core belief becomes our people are image bearers of God, or even just our people are our most valuable asset, capable of incredible creativity?
Okay.
That's not just a slogan. If you truly adopt that mindset, it forces you to change the system. You have to create structures for growth, fair compensation, psychological safety. The metrics have to change from cost per employee to maybe employee flourishing or innovation rate. The paradigm shift demands a different system. The gospel itself, in a theological sense, is the ultimate paradigm shift about value, purpose, and relationship.
So shifting the paradigm from, say, fear and scarcity to maybe service and abundance, that changes all the rules.
It changes everything, and intervening effectively at these deeper levels, goals, and mindsets, it requires more than just analysis. It requires what we might call discernment. It's that wisdom to see past the surface noise, to grasp the true underlying dynamics, and to act with clarity and conviction even when things are ambiguous. It's about making wise, principled choices based on understanding the long-term systemic impact.
Okay, wow. So let's try to quickly recap the nuggets here for everyone listening. Systems thinking really shifts you. You go from just reacting to events.
To discerning patterns and the structures underneath.
Right, and it teaches you to respect delays, to think long-term, and critically, to focus your energy not just anywhere, but on the high leverage points.
Especially changing the system's purpose and, even deeper, the underlying mindset.
And the ultimate payoff isn't just efficiency, is it? It's about building resilience.
Resilience and principled leadership, yeah. When you understand the full impact of your choices on everyone involved long-term, you build organizations that are more adaptable, more ethical, and frankly, more durable, more redemptive even. Which really leads us to a final, maybe provocative thought for you to take away. This comes from the reflection questions in our sources. When future generations look back at the system you're building right now, your team, your company, your ministry, whatever it is, will they thank you? Will they thank you for your faith and your foresight?
Or will they perhaps curse you for taking shortcuts, for those brilliant decisions that were made in isolation without understanding the whole picture? That really is the challenge of systemic leadership. We hope this deep dive encourages you to embrace that journey of learning and discernment in your own context. Thanks for joining us.